Greetings, good evening. Thank you so much for joining. You are very welcome to this webinar on improving clinical trial conduct in Africa. And I will go now to a few housekeeping details. We have a very interesting evening. We have Dawit Asmama, we have Dr. Wutor Baleng, we have Natasha Taylor-Meyer. Looking forward to your questions and interactions with you. So first off, this webinar is being recorded. Please use the chat box to introduce yourself and any issues you may be facing. For questions, kindly use the Q&A. Someone is monitoring them and these questions will be answered as much as possible in the course of the webinar. Due to the numbers, your microphones are disabled. And if you'd like to speak, you will need to raise your hands and then someone will go ahead and enable you to speak. However, we want to request that as much as possible, you use the chat for technical issues. And please keep the questions coming in the question and answer section. So as a way of introduction, I'm extremely excited to be the chair of this interesting talk today on improving clinical trials. And my name is Brenda Okech, very privileged to be director at UVRI-IAVI. And I thought I would include a few pictures of our program so that if you haven't visited, you have a snapshot of what it looks like. So we carry out clinical trials mainly for HIV vaccines and also prevention products. And at the moment, we are also doing some COVID vaccine trials. We also do some epi research and interested in several diseases that are connected to HIV, with HIV as our focus. This webinar comes as a kind of long story started by so many partners, and I'm really privileged to be part of the webinar as chair because I was there for the genesis to see it happening. So several PDPs realized that there was a gap as far as clinical trial conduct. And I must say that as a program, UVRI-IAVI has benefited. We have 3 individuals who have already gone through the program and it's been exciting. I was part of a group of PDPs, partners, and other fellows. I too got in touch with this team through the TDR fellowship program, which is also funded by Gates. So we gave some input to what the program is today, and it's really, really exciting to now be here and hear about experiences and also to have some fellows talk about what the course has meant to them. So our first speaker is Assistant Professor Dawit Asmama. He is a fellow from GSK Biologicals, and that is where I too did my TDR training. So it's a pleasure to be introducing him as our first speaker today. Dawit is also a monitor for WHO. He served as a project manager for European Vaccine Initiative. He also worked as a coordinator for one of the EDCTP funded trials with Amanet. He has worked at Staten Serum Institute, which is also all about vaccines in Denmark. He's worked at St. Paul's Medical College, and at the moment, he is actually program leader for the ClinOps. This is a very exciting program, and Dawit, we look forward to hearing more from you. Over to you, you're very welcome. Dawit, please go ahead and share your screen.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda, for the generous introduction. So let me share my screen. Yeah, so basically what I'm going to do is I will just briefly talk about the ClinOps training program, which is a study coordinators program, and which has been ongoing for now this is the fourth iteration when CDT delivered it. And I'll talk about the setup and the lessons learned while implementing the program here at CDT. The outline of my talk, first I will take you through background on CDT-Africa, which is hosting the ClinOps training program, and also Addis Ababa University hosting CDT-Africa. Then I will briefly talk about current approach in clinical research training, and then I will tell you unique features of ClinOps training program, and then talk about the innovative approach of course setup for ClinOps. And then I'll talk about the lessons that we learned while implementing this program. And then I'll finally present some preliminary results, survey results from the students. About the Addis Ababa University, it is the largest and oldest university in Ethiopia, and with annual capacity of 53,000 students. There are 73 undergraduate programs and 293 postgraduate programs. Its rank in Africa, it ranks 6th, and its global rank is between 400 and 500. There are 3 centers of excellences in Addis Ababa University, including CDT-Africa, and Black Lion Hospital under Addis Ababa University is the largest in the country. CDT-Africa is a center of excellence supported by World Bank, and its core functions are research and capacity building in medical discovery and development. And it operates under 3 platforms, namely medical discovery and development, and care delivery and innovation, clinical trials, and regulatory science. Under the education and research program, there are short courses now, which includes ClinOps and master's program in clinical trials, PhD in translational medicine, postdoc programs. And CDT-Africa is a regional center of excellence, mainly covering East Africa. And it focused on supporting female students to bridge the gap of gender imbalance. Achievements so far, more than 700 students are trained and are still being trained. Active product development work is ongoing. More than 300 publications have been published in peer-reviewed journals. As you've seen in the previous slide, new educational programs have been established. Resource and infrastructure for continuing the research activity has been solicited and are still being solicited. And since its inception, the CDT-Africa has recruited more than 100 new staff. Now, talking about the current approach in clinical research training, as you know, whenever a site is to initiate a clinical trial, the staff has to undergo training. And the training the staff will undergo is usually a kind of traditional training which focuses on ISA GCP E6. And these types of training have been observed not to be optimal, and they will not be enabling the staff to fully engage in clinical trials when they are given for the first time. And when these types of trainings are also repeated, they will not further increase the skills of the staff. And the current recommendation actually is to use competency-based training, and also using experience sharing as a means of delivering the course. The training also needs to touch upon different various domains of clinical trials. Now, to tell you some of the unique features of the ClinOps program, to start with, the program is competency-based training, and the syllabus is anchored in the TDHN competency framework. We also get inputs from product development partners, CROs, TDR fellows, FCD, which is Faculty of Capacity Development, all of them very much cognizant of the challenge in implementing clinical trials in Africa. The focus of the training is on practical recurring problems in African sites, and basically it covers all relevant domains to enable trial conduct by the staff after the training. This is an intensive on-the-job training for study coordinators, and it employs innovative training approach. It has also monitoring and evaluation effort to ensure course objectives are met and there is a continuous improvement process. Now, to tell you some of the innovative approaches of ClinOps training program in its course setup, first we use the Moodle learning management system as an online training program. Moodle is our classroom basically for the students, where we post all the resources, and the students will be able to interact with their fellow trainees in the chats and in the forum discussions, and also VoiceThread recordings are posted there. We also use VoiceThread, which is an online platform for tutors to upload their slides and then give verbal explanation of the subject matter. And then the link is going to be made available for the students to go through the recordings. And then whatever questions are popping in the minds of the trainees, they will post again in the VoiceThread as a text or as a voice record. And then the tutor will be interacting with them, with the trainees. We extensively use experience sharing as a form of course delivery, and that's what it what makes the course live. And we have got also a section called Common Audit Inspection Findings. And this is a situation where we pick most frequent findings in a particular lesson. And then we're going to make a brief voice recording, and then we're going to make it available for the trainees to undergo. And then we'll prompt the students to also post any related findings that they know. This is how the Moodle learning management system looks like. Basically, we post everything, including introduction and learning objectives, including the different VoiceThreads, section for forum discussions and experience sharing, and different resources are going to be posted. And on the left side, you see different types of functionalities of Moodle, which will enable us to gauge the involvements of the students. And with this, we'll be able who is actively involved and who is falling behind. This is how a VoiceThread recording looks like. Here the tutor has uploaded a slide and has given a verbal explanation on the subject matter. And then the students, after going through the VoiceThread, have already posted their questions. And the tutor has already responded to the question. And you have got several of these interactions down there. And basically, VoiceThread is a very ideal tool for intensive interaction between tutors and trainees, and also among trainees. And if you have got additional tasks like multiple choice questions or other types of tasks, you will be able to trace where the students are in terms of engaging with the tasks. And here we have got two sections, ungraded and graded. So students who have already submitted and whose work has been evaluated, they are going to be listed under graded. And under ungraded, those students who have submitted but not evaluated, or those students who are still in progress or who have not yet touched upon the tasks, they are going to be listed. So for students who have not yet submitted, we can send automatically an email, a reminder email, telling them to submit. And that's what makes VoiceThread handy. Additionally, we have got a 1-hour Zoom live tutorial meeting every Thursday. And the idea here is the trainees, after going through the materials posted on Moodle and also VoiceThread, if there are any doubts created in their mind, then this will be a session to clear. Of course, further interactions is possible through the forum discussions, but additionally, this is one means to clear doubts. We post also resources, and these resources are divided into mandatory sections. These are types of materials which the students must go through in order for them to be able to answer some questions in Moodle or interact with their fellow trainees or the tutors. We have got also a recommended resource section. This is for a bit advanced trainees, and the content is a bit advanced. And finally, we have got an in-depth resource section, which is a really detailed account of the subject matter, and this is really for advanced trainees. The ClinOps training program also employs extensive planning upfront, and way before the course starts, we developed a lesson plan for the different lessons that we are delivering. So on this template, we agree on the lesson learning objectives, which voice threads to include, which tasks also to include, and also resources, including the time estimates, how much it takes, and also the structure of the tutorial activity is going to be sort of thought about. We have got also a group work on developing risk management plan, and the risk management plan is going to be developed for one of the real clinical trials one of the students are involved in upon choosing by the group members. And for this trial that has been chosen, the group is going to identify risks, then they are going to analyze the risk and come up with risk mitigation plan, and finally indicate in which study documents they are going to indicate or reflect this risk analysis and mitigation, whether it is the protocol itself, whether it is SOP, or whether the monitoring plan or others. So ClinOps training program covers various domains in clinical trial and in depth. So just to give you an idea, lesson 1 will touch upon introduction to clinical research operations and moves on to data management and biostatistics. And then it discusses study design and protocol development, and then project and financial management. And then it takes through the trainees through conducting a trial part 1 and part 2, and it even discusses about closing out a trial and reporting it. And we have got also a discussion on working with external partners, including sponsors. We have got also a lesson on quality system audits and inspection. And finally, we delve into pharmacovigilance, where we discuss about detection of safety, managing it, and reporting it. So each lesson will stay for a week, and the lesson starts on Mondays. On average, each lesson will take between 8 and 10 hours. And this is depending on the experience of the trainees. Just to give you a sense of how detailed the lessons are, for example, lesson 1 on introduction to clinical research and operations, we have got VoiceThread recordings on phases of clinical trial and clinical trial authorization. We have got recording on ethical considerations in clinical trials and informed consent, another one on ICA-GCP and clinical trial site responsibilities, including common audits or inspection findings. And the tasks actually reflect the voice threads, and we have got also the different resources. Lesson 2, again, has got a recording on source documentation in CRF completion guidelines, CRF design, data management lifecycle, particularly focusing on site responsibilities. And then we have got biostatistics, and of course, common audit and inspection findings. And as usual, the tasks are going to reflect the voice recordings, and we have got different materials for the trainees to go through. Lesson 3 has got recordings on clinical trial protocol, clinical trial design, and also common audits inspection findings. And again, tasks which parallel the recordings and materials are available. Lesson 4 on project and financial management. We have got recordings on project management part 1 and part 2, and also financial management, and the tasks including the materials. Lesson 5 on conducting a trial, which is part 1, has got a recording and also common audit inspection findings. The tasks include management of investigational products, blinding with respect to managing investigational products, and also adherence to treatment. We have got also a task on patient recruitment and retention and common findings, and also there are resources for the trainees to go through. The second part of conducting a trial has got a VoiceThread recording on it, and also recording on common audit and inspection findings. And the tasks include tasks on site investigator files, common findings, and also communication with competent authorities, both regulatory and ethics committees, and also a task on risk-based monitoring. And we have got the different resources. Lesson 7, we have got VoiceThread recording on important aspects of closing out a trial. Also recording on consort and ISH E3 guidelines for reporting a trial. Here, the focus is the site responsibilities and some tips for preparing manuscripts, including common audit and inspection findings and the corresponding activities, tasks, including the resources. Lesson 8, working with external partners. We have got recordings on key partners in clinical trials, also recording on intellectual property and versus publishing. And then we have got also a recording on metrics in clinical trials. So the tasks again are going to reflect what's discussed in the VoiceThread, and then we have got the resources. Lesson 9 has got a recording on quality systems, non-compliance, audit and inspection, and also common audit and inspection findings. And the tasks which reflect the, which mirrors the voice recordings, and also resources are available. Lesson 10 on pharmacovigilance, we have got a VoiceThread recording on safety evaluation of products, safety management, regulatory obligations in safety aspects, and common audit inspection findings. And again, the tasks are going to sort of reflect the recordings. So after going through the depths of discussion, here what you see here are the ClinOps tutors who are highly experienced in clinical trials. Some of them started their career in clinical trials as clinical monitors and now advanced to directorial positions in international endeavors in clinical trials. Some of them are actually, they have worked and they are still working as principal investigators of clinical trials in the continent. And many of the tutors are also, the part of the TDR or EDSTP alumni in career development, and that means they have got experience already working in pharmaceutical industries. So it's really an excellent mix of expertise in clinical trial. Now I'll take you through some of the lessons that we've learned while implementing the ClinOps training program. And the first one is social bonding is very much critical for success on online programs such as this one. This is not something new that we have learned, but we just witnessed that this is very much important. So the bonding actually started from the stage of contacting the applicants that they have been selected. And we have got also induction meeting, and this helped in familiarizing to one another, among the tutors and the trainees. And we have got also live tutorials every Thursday that also helped a lot in terms of strengthening the bond. We usually request the tutors to turn on their videos so that the trainees will know their tutors. And I myself, as a lead tutor in this course, I have been present in all the lessons and actively interacting with the trainees and also troubleshooting problems. So that further helped, strengthening the bond. And during live tutorials, we encourage the students to use to turn on their mics and speak up. And actually, what happened is that towards the end of the lesson, we were able to identify almost every participant in the course by their voices and sounds. And we also introduced a section in Moodle, which is called Introduction of Course Participants. And basically what the trainees do here is that they will introduce themselves to their fellow trainees. So this all helped, in increasing the participation of the trainees. The second lesson is that attending to the needs of the trainees really pays off at the end. And at the beginning, lots of difficulties, technical difficulties were there, and difficulties including accessing Moodle or accessing VoiceThread, posting on the forum, or so many other technical problems. So we try to respond immediately to the requests and the confusions and the difficulties, if not within 24 hours. And the mode with which we try to solve the problem is by giving a step-by-step guidance, and also using screenshots on how to solve the problem. So this really helped in terms of solving the problem and also enhancing the students who were helped in this way. They were very much likely to stay to the end of the program. The other lesson is that about the trainees falling behind. For any online course, one of the main challenges is the dropout rate, and particularly so for us because this is an intensive on-the-job training. And what we did to tackle this problem is actually we actively searched for trends and suggest any suggestions which indicates that some trainees are falling behind, just by looking at the last access to course in the Moodle, and also by looking at which courses have, which tasks in the course have been accessed by the students. So when a student accesses a particular task, then it's going to be ticked off. So by combining this information for trainees who are falling behind, we send reminders, and sometimes simply improving the access, regiving the access to the students to Moodle helped, and sometimes it's really needed, a one-to-one type of help interaction for those who needed it. And after that, the students were able to be back on track. Now, towards the end of the lessons, what we learned actually was that compiling the actual activities of the trainees up to that point versus what's expected of them, and sending this summary to the students really helped in terms of trainees completing the pending tasks. The students are expected to actively be involved in forum discussions, multiple choice questions, be it in Moodle or VoiceThread or both, and also extra participation and contribution in VoiceThread, participation in live tutorials, and also attendance. All of this were sort of mandatory, and compiling this information to the students and sending it to the students were really helpful in terms of the students, completing the pending tasks. The other lesson is that it's really important that we give extra time at the end of the course. This is particularly so for trainees, which we observed them to be actively engaged in live tutorials, in accessing some of the activities, but not able to actually complete the tasks. Probably this could be because there's busy schedule from their workplaces. So giving extra time was really helpful for these types of trainees, and within these extra weeks, they were able to complete their pending task, and the turnaut was very huge in terms of completing pending tasks. Now, in this slide and the subsequent few slides, I'm going to present some of the preliminary findings from the trainees. So this is a pre and post-course survey, and the point here is that this is a self-appraisal by the students, and also it was an open type of survey. So with this, what we've noticed is that confidence in effectively coordinating a trial significantly improved towards improvement after the course. And also the same was true for confidence in understanding of clinical data management process. Again, confidence in conducting trials, abiding by ethical principles significantly improved. Again, confidence in understanding the informed consent process was improved. Patient recruitment approach, so similar trend was seen, and similar trend was also seen in managing investigational products. Confidence also in patient safety reporting process improved. Again, confidence about managing investigational site files improved. And confidence in effectively closing out a trial, that was also encouraging. And what you see here is the course survey itself. And so regarding the question whether the content was well organized and easy to follow, so it was rated high or good. As to the availability of instructors, that was also rated high or good. The amount of time to complete the course, even if there was some variations and some students showing not being satisfied, but the vast majority was of rated the situation as high or good. So regarding the question whether the learning approach worked well for the trainees, again, that was encouraging. And the accessibility of the online course, it was rated high or good. Overall technical quality of the online course, again, that was encouraging. And we asked it, based on your experience in this course, would you take another online course? And as you can see, out of the 69 respondents, 68 said yes, we'll take another online course, but one said no. And looking at his or her reason, what was mentioned was that could not really keep track of the lessons, as the timing didn't work for me. So the online course is now converted to a free to access version of the form of the course, and it can be accessed through this link. I think we are going to share our slides after the presentation. Then when you get the slides, you'll be able to access the course. We also are working on community of practice. We have developed already the website for it. And the idea here is that the recent alumni and past alumni to interact to each other by posting challenges and difficulties that they are facing in their real world challenge in clinical trials that they are implementing. So if one of the alumni is already aware of the challenge, and the solutions are going to be forwarded by that alumni or by the tutors. The website also offers the opportunity for alumni to share opportunities for training or for opportunities for jobs. So we are thinking of running the program again, and for potential trainees to register for upcoming courses, you can use this link and show your express interest. And for organizations and initiatives who are interested to work with us in the future delivery of the course, you can use this link again to show to express interest. Or alternatively, you can contact us through this email. And thank you very much for your attendance. So back to you, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Dawit. Thank you for that very, very clear presentation and for taking us all through what the course has evolved to. I'll just ask you to stop sharing now. I believe there are no questions at present, but I want to encourage those on call to please type in your questions. I think I see one now. It says, it's good to recruit and train a cadre of Africans in clinical trials. However, Sub-Saharan Africa is lagging behind in conduct of clinical trials. And Kennedy's question is, what can be done to address this challenge? So Dawit, I'll ask you to take that very quickly, and then we'll go on to the next. Thank you. Back to you, Dawit.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda, for the question. yeah, basically conducting, increasing the conduct of clinical trial Africa is a big topic, hot topic. So there are different hurdles. Well, one of the hurdles is, the skills in clinical trial. That's what we are trying to address by training African clinical trialists and study coordinators. But that's not the complete picture. We have got also a need for infrastructure and also a need for funding. These are, some of the most important things. So one of the issues is increasing, the clinical trial sites, and this could be done. This needs money, and this needs also know-how. And the other aspect is funding. Usually for clinical trials, this is coming from, private, public fundings in Africa. So being able to, this is not going to be solved only by, the researchers. There should be also commitment in terms of policy, nationwide. The government has to also commit, some percentage of their GDP to clinical research in general, and these are some of the things that could be done. Otherwise, by itself, this is a very huge topic, and that's what we are trying to address partly by increasing, by training African sites, African, study coordinators, and increasing their skills.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dawit. So we'll go back to our agenda. Please keep the questions coming. We will have some time at the end where we have a panel discussion. So next, I just want to sneak in a picture as chair of the beginnings of this cleanup. So these are some of the people who were present to contribute to the development of this course. And I want to take this moment to acknowledge your contributions. I can see some of the attendees are fellows, former fellows, others are alumni who attended the Clinical Study Coordinator course earlier on. So thank you all of you, and a big thank you as well to Global Health Network for hosting this webinar. So I'll quickly move on to our next speaker, who is Dr. Baleng Mahama Wutor. Dr. Baleng is a medical doctor. Currently, he's serving in MRC, Gambia, where his interest is in pneumococcal vaccines. He's doing patient care. He's also involved in coordinating trial activities and supervising training. Dr. Wutor, we are excited to hear from you as someone who already had clinical trial experience. How was this training to you? Over to you, Dr. Wutor.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Brenda, for that generous introduction. I'll just be sharing my screen in a minute. So that okay. Please, can you see my slides in slide view mode?
Yes, please go ahead. We see it.
Thank you so much once again. So like Dr. Brenda said, I'm currently in the Gambia. I'm working with the Medical Research Council in the rural part of Gambia, and we are basically doing a clinical trial, trying to compare different doses of the pneumococcal conjugate vaccine in children under 5. So that's basically the little about myself. I basically in the trial, I'm a research clinician, so I provide direct patient care, at the Bassi Health Center, but I also coordinate the clinical activities, at the level of the clinic. And I also manage and supervise the work of the nurses, organize training programs for them. And then, basically manage their activities at the clinic. And so when I saw the advert for this training program in clinical operations, I was excited to be part of it because I had joined this trial, in the past year. And so even though, of course, when you join every trial, you do go through some training, there were still a few gaps that I thought that I needed to close. And so I joined the course basically to build that capacity and the skills and knowledge in carrying out my duties as a research clinician and also as a clinical coordinator. And I mean, personally, I was looking forward to learning from very experienced clinical trialists, people who have done this before and have a lot of expertise in the field. And I was also looking forward to listening from other participants. I mean, conducting clinical trials, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is a bit difficult because the terrain is difficult, different. You have to consider a lot of social and cultural factors that are unique to your environment. And so I was really looking forward to hearing from other participants, sharing their perspectives, and of course, sharing my own perspectives from being part of this clinical trial in the Gambia. And I also saw that the course was flexible. I could, go through these recordings later. And so that was also good for me because, of course, I'm still doing my normal work. And so it was important to find a way to combine the two. And I think Dr. Dawit already went into detail about some of the things that were taught in the course. I just highlighted a few of them that we went through in the course. Of course, we looked at ethical considerations when conducting clinical trials. And like I said, it's a bit unique when you come to lower and middle income countries, because most of the population is illiterate. And so you want to make sure that even as important as we want research to be conducted in lower and middle income countries, you want to be sure that it's still GCP compliant, even though most of the people may not be educated. You want to be sure that you are still sticking to these ethical principles and making sure that people are not exploited. And so we went through some of these ethical principles, tailored to the lower middle income countries and how to go about that. Designing studies, developing protocols, making sure that when you are developing your CRFs, you do it in a very comprehensive manner, developing standard operating procedures, and then also data quality, because we know that at the end of every clinical trial is your data that you are going to rely on to do your analysis and then publish your results. And so it's important to also understand how to ensure data quality from the time of recruitment, collection of data to doing quality checks on the data and all of that. And so we went through all of that, the life cycle of clinical trials, understanding that closing out a clinical trial is just as important as starting or initiating the clinical trial and all the processes in between the two. We also went through project management, financial management. As a research clinician, this probably is not directly important to me, but it helped me really understand, the challenges of my project manager, because that is important because you are just looking at one part, the clinic, we have to do this, but the courses also helped me understand things from their perspectives, so that you can work with your project manager better. And at the end of the course, we did develop a risk management plan, like Dr. Dawit mentioned, which was really, really an interesting part of it, because we went into groups and we discussed, a particular trial. In my case, we adopted the trial that I was working on as a model, and we're able to develop a risk management plan throughout the life cycle of the trial, some of the risks that could arise, and more importantly, how to put measures in place to ensure that those risks are mitigated or lessened. So for me, the unique things about this particular course for me was the opportunity for us to share our experiences, to share our problems about conducting clinical trials in lower middle income countries, and also to learn the techniques to solve them. And so it was really interesting in these discussion forums when you raise an issue that, they're having issues with auditing investigational products, and then someone says, we had a similar issue, and this is what we did, and it really helped. And so I really enjoyed that part of it, that part of learning from the experience of others from other lower middle income countries. And as I said already, we developed a risk management plan, which was also good to really understand some of the risks that may arise from the trial and to put in measures to ensure that they don't arise, or if they do arise, how to mitigate those risks. And it was also, we're coming from different backgrounds, different countries. Some of us were clinicians, some were from the laboratory perspective. And so it was very good to have these diverse ideas because it enriched our group discussions. And we also, the course was also self-paced. And so you could take it, as and when you could find time. Like I mentioned initially, you still have to do your work as a clinician or as a research clinician. And so it was really important and unique that you could even still watch the live tutorials and still ask questions on those tutorials and have responses from the tutors. So personally, it has helped me in my work, especially in managing the teams that I'm leading, especially the nurses. Understanding team management and group dynamics was really important for me because at the end of the day, once you start a clinical trial, you realize that a lot of what you do is managing people, keeping them motivated, keeping them excited about the work. And so this doesn't look like a thing that a lot of people pay attention to, but through this course, I learned a lot of principles to resolve conflict, to motivate my teams, and to build successful teams. And some of the skills I've learned from the course, I've started applying them. Coincidentally, I was together with my line manager, we're developing a manuscript for a paper where we had worked on. And as part of this course, part of it was also teaching us practically how to write good manuscripts. And so it was really, really interesting that when I went through that part, I had to go back, take my manuscript, go through some of the places and apply those principles and editing them. So it was really, really practical for me. Again, as a clinician, I also do supervisory visits where I supervise the work of the nurses. Every month we go to the villages where the nurses are and then try to be sure that they are doing things according to protocol. And this course was also good because it helped me to focus attention on what is important for the clinical trial, so that if you went for a supervisory visit, you are more concerned or very much concerned about what your primary endpoints are or what your secondary endpoints are. And so you are able to identify those issues and solve them, sort of applying like a risk-based approach in monitoring. And I'm applying that now and it's been great. Just to say, of course, taking part in the course has not made me an expert in clinical trials, but it has definitely set me on a path to becoming one. It has really stimulated my interest, and I hope in the future to, of course, gain more expertise in the field of conducting clinical trials. And for me, the course has really, really exceeded my expectations. And so on behalf of all who have benefited from the course, I would like to thank the organizers, CDT-Africa, and of course, all who have collaborated in bringing this course to us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Wutor. That was really inspiring. People skills, motivating the staff, as well as even your manuscript writing abilities. That is really impressive. Thank you so much for sharing that. Next, I would like to invite our next speaker, who is Natasha Taylor-Meyer. She's a virologist and she's working in University of Cape Town. She came to this course very interested in HIV research and also health consultancy, but without clinical trial experience. Over to you, Natasha.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brenda, and yes, good afternoon to everyone. Initially, when I received an email from Dr. Dawit asking me if I could partake in this session, I was like, oh my goodness. But actually, on second thoughts, I was actually quite flattered. And I'm glad I have had this opportunity to present to you today my experience of the course as an individual with no experience in clinical trials. A little bit about me. Yes, I do hold a master's degree in virology. I'm a research officer at the University of Cape Town. I'm currently responsible for managing a COVID-19 reference materials biorepository. And this is where we collect samples, we process them, we store them, and at a later stage we will be distributing these COVID-19 reference samples for ongoing research or diagnostic work. This project has been sponsored by Find, who are based there in Switzerland, and I am the interface between our PI and sponsor. And I currently line manage a lab assistant, and I coordinate with my MO, medical officer, and nurse, and I also do a lot of communicating with other stakeholders, our Department of Health, Ethics, and occasionally with finance with regards to our funds and also ongoing contracts. Why did I enroll on this course? Well, based on my project role with FIND's project and not having any previous clinical trial experience, although having like a very basic understanding, FIND suggested that I apply for the online ClinOps training course. And this is organized by CDT-Africa based in Ethiopia. This course is very much offered to those individuals who reside in low to middle income countries. And the course is supported through grant funding. So it's free to those successful applicants. The course aims to support study coordinators in carrying out their roles and responsibilities as essential members of study teams in conducting high quality, regulatory compliant clinical trials. The course covers the essentials of how to prepare a site for a trial, how to actually conduct the site itself, and then it takes you through the closeout process of a trial. And as part of this course, there was the development of an interactive risk management plan. And this was developed through group work. What was expected from all of us? Well, we were informed up front that we needed to invest approximately 10 hours of our time per week, And this was obviously very much dependent on your previous clinical trial knowledge and experience, and this coursework was obviously completed over and above your current job. It was a rather intensive 10-week online course, and I think there were over 80 participants from all over Africa, which is great because, I mean, we're sitting in South Africa, you're dealing with Mali, Kenya, Uganda, Zambia. It was really, really good that it was nice that it covered all of Africa. And the course consisted of weekly themes, which Dr. Dawit has gone into. And yes, they were portrayed across as voice threads. And then you did tasks. There were multiple choice questions you needed to do. And this course is actually divided into two parts. One is a sole individual and their active participation and doing the tasks, the multiple choice, and being actively engaging on your open sessions. And then there's a second part where you have group work. So each week there was also an online interactive session where you could come to these sessions, perhaps you had questions, there was something that you didn't quite understand, so it was always an opportunity where you could pose questions. A very supportive session, and you often gained experience from these. The voice threads were conducted very much in your own time. So you had a week to do each one. And yes, we were asked to do between about 8 to 10 hours, but I think because I live in a bit of the dark ages, I spent a little bit longer because for me, I can't always work online. And there's no hard copy of this course, so I would listen to the voice recordings and then I would sit and make my own notes. And I think that's where I came across the questions that I wanted, and I wanted more information, which enabled me to be actively engaging in the sessions. The 80 participants, we were divided into groups, and I was nominated as a team lead for our group. And here we had to develop a risk management plan based on either a trial that is currently ongoing by one of your group mates or a hypothetical one. And yes, there were online sessions where we sat, we strategized, we laughed, we joked. There were times when we were incredibly frustrated. Sometimes it was quite hard because timing, different time zones people were sitting in, or they maybe do a lot of their work in the evenings, you're busy in the mornings, so it was finding times that suited everybody. But yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to actually have these interactive sessions and to communicate with colleagues and to strategize together. And we all knew that at the end of the day, that we needed to collectively work towards one end point. And this was where the second part of your coursework came out. So it counts towards 100 points, 50% for individual work, 50% for your group work. I haven't received my mark yet, so I don't know, perhaps I haven't really graduated yet, I'm not sure. What did I learn? I sit in an office where we do clinical trials. Well, I sit in an office within an area that does clinical trials. I've worked in a laboratory generating clinical trial results, and I've heard he or she is a clinical trial coordinator. But what is involved? What is actually required? And the 10 weeks provides a thorough understanding of what goes into a clinical trial process, from project and grant management through to trial design, project protocol development, taking the phases of a trial into consideration, the regulatory authorizing bodies and their roles, and always ensuring that your trial is ICH GCP compliant. There's ethical principles for patient recruitment, how you're going to inform consent them, how you're going to retain those patients on your study, data management and monitoring, pharmacovigilance, and safety reporting. There needs to be, in order for all of this to work nicely, there also needs to be a very thorough quality system in place, and this is achieved through your sound source documentation, where you're devising and implementing standard operating procedures, case report forms, and more. And all of your documentation at the end of the day needs to be very sound. It needs to have quality, it needs to be attributable, it needs to be original, accurate, and valid. But most importantly, there needs to be accountability. And this is a requirement for any form of audit or inspections, quality control, quality assurance, and more importantly, being able to report on these results at the end of your trial. One needs to learn how to engage and manage a site, working with different people, not only within your team, also managing people that are actually external partners, your funder. You're always managing different responsibilities, different situations. And we all know that at times this can be quite a challenge. All of this that I've spoken about, and there's more, enables one and a site to be prepared for a clinical trial, to coordinate the trial and to successfully close out that trial. And then you've got to handle post-trial responsibilities and report results in a very timely manner. What did I gain from this course? Well, I thoroughly enjoyed growing my skills and also gaining a deeper understanding and insight into conducting clinical trials from the start all the way through to close out. So yes, I've known patches of it, but it's really nice to get a holistic overview. I've applied some of my learnings into my current project, very much dealing with crossing T's, dotting I's, correct date formats, filling in forms, all part of my project at the moment. It was a wonderful opportunity for me to engage with and learn from qualified course tutors and fellow colleagues across Africa. I'm very grateful to have been sponsored to attend such an exciting and encapsulating course. And I'm very eager to take my learnings into practice and be challenged the position of a study coordinator. Lastly, I'd like to say a huge thank you to CDT-Africa, the collaborators and partners, for organizing this incredibly insightful course that I thoroughly enjoyed attending. And what an opportunity it was to engage and to interact and learn from so many interesting and knowledgeable colleagues all across Africa. Dr. Dawit for his mentorship and always being available, encouraging, and ever so helpful. Find for offering me this opportunity to apply for this course. Prof. Ntusi, he is my current boss, and I'd like to thank him for his support. And if any of you get given this opportunity to apply for this course, I strongly encourage you to, because it is a wonderful opportunity. Invest that time, learn, and come out with great knowledge. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Indeed, we are so grateful that you had all these great experiences in the course. And thank you everyone for keeping the questions coming. I think some have been answered, but the key seems to be the trend is where do we go from here? After this capacity is built, then what? There is also a question around when will we have products that are developed in Africa? So all these are very important for us to answer today as panelists. And I'll request that we quickly have a go because we have another presentation by Dawit very briefly to introduce our next topic, and then we will have the panel discussion. So any of the panelists want to speak to what next? Natasha, Dr. Wutor, after this great experience, do you see opportunities to work with alumni to further this interaction, maybe develop something together like a grant? And how do we take this forward? Does any of you want to answer?
Well, I could, share a few thoughts on, yeah, I mean, this still linked to the question someone asked earlier about, how to ensure that we get more funding and research in lower middle income countries. There's still a long way to go. I think organizing this training is one of the ways of achieving that goal. And for me, some of the people that I've met, some of my colleagues that I've met in Nigeria and Ghana, of course, I'm originally from Ghana, now in the Gambia, but I still met some Ghanaians there. They are going to be key people going forward, in terms of collaborations, in terms of learning from them, in terms of troubleshooting the problems, that we have. But for me, this training is a beginning, because if we are able to train a lot of people who understand, what clinical trials are, how to conduct them, and have the expertise to do them, then it's easier for PDPs and funding agencies to trust that the expertise is there, and so people can do these trials in Africa, and they will be able to entrust those responsibilities to us. So for me, this training should keep going on, and I'm excited about the fact that this whole concept of having an alumni network, because I think it's really important that we keep sharing our perspectives, our challenges, and getting solutions from colleagues, across Africa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wutor. Natasha, do you want to speak to any of the questions?
And I think I would just like to add on to what Dr. Wutor had to say. In particular, my course is sponsored. It's an international sponsored project. And I think if more of us in low to middle income countries have this opportunity of attending courses like this and building capacity together, I think the funders would then be more interested in investing further funds into our countries, knowing that we've got the expertise and the abilities and the trained personnel who would be able to conduct studies for them in our own countries.
Thank you, Natasha. And I believe that from Natasha and Dr. Wutor, it's clear that being a study coordinator is a viable profession in Africa. And in fact, the PDPs like FIND that sponsored Natasha were among the contributors to have this course, IAVI, all the ones that we mentioned earlier, MMV. So they are already interested in bringing studies to Africa. And that is why they sponsored and contributed to have this course developed. So I want to just ask Dawit to now speak to the next, but I trust that the PDPs are hearing. Africa is ready. People are interested in being part of trials and ensuring that there's a sustainable flow of trials coming on in Africa. And here I want to also acknowledge TDR, because TDR began this so many years back in the 90s to develop clinical trials capacity. And indeed, those fellows have also contributed to this course. Dawit himself is a previous fellow. And we have, like from UVRI-IAVI, we have a current fellow at European Vaccine Initiative. I'm so excited to see that she's joined this evening. So capacity is continually being built up. And I will now open it to you, Dawit, and you can quickly speak to the questions and then give your brief presentation so that we can have the panel. Over to you, Dawit.
Yeah, so many interesting questions. While Wutor and Natasha were presenting, I was actually typing, responding to the questions. Yeah, it is true. The clinical trial in general is not, the coverage is low. The number of clinical trials is low currently, but as you've indicated, the capacity is coming and it can be expanded. And from what we have observed for clinical research centers and sites, the most important thing is, delivering good quality clinical trial, conduct of good quality of trials. If that is the case, what we've seen is that for established centers, the number of clinical trials coming to them, it keeps on increasing. So we really need to focus on achieving quality, attaining quality, and continuously building our capacity. And that way we'll be able to, sustain our career in clinical trials. So that's the point I would like to make. Otherwise, I've been typing response to the questions. If there are any particular questions that I would like to address here live, Brenda, that's fine. You can shoot the question. Otherwise, we need to move to the next section, right, Brenda?
Yes, quickly move to the next section, and then we shall have the final round of questions in the panel.
Yeah, probably before we proceed, Adam, if you can run the first poll regarding the experience of the audience on decentralized clinical trials. Yes, so here we have the first poll, and if you respond to the question, do you have experience in conducting decentralized trials? So there is a mix of audience. So some of you, we expect probably you have already involved in decentralized clinical trials. Then we'll talk about decentralized clinical trials a bit, brief introduction about what it is. And the main focus here is whether, what are the advantages of decentralized clinical trials, specifically in African contexts. Otherwise, in the West, in the North, its advantage is well documented. And then we'll also look at some challenge in implementing DCT, particular challenge in African setup. So hopefully you will continue responding to this question. So you have to click either yes or no, depending on your experience. Hopefully, Adam, the answers are coming to you.
They are. We have about 50% have participated. So when you want me to enter, you say.
Yeah. So when we go to decentralized clinical trial, basically this is a clinical trial which is conducted remotely. Either using telemedicine or using mobile or local healthcare providers, and also using technologies which is a bit different from the ones which are used in the traditional site-based types of clinical trials. So in decentralized clinical trials, some or all activities could be conducted in a location which is separate from the investigator's location. And basically, the trial could be conducted outside the boundaries of the traditional clinical trial sites. And as you know, in traditional clinical trials, the activities are actually centered around the clinical trial sites and research centers. But in decentralized clinical trials, the approach is we are decentralizing the activities and it's more centered around the participants or patients. Now, with this comes some advantage, including increased convenience to the patients, the participants, and also issues related to travel, such as cost or time spent on travel are going to be significantly curtailed. So we can have either full-fledged types of decentralization where even the recruitment, the visits are going to be remote, and even the investigational products are going to be directly sent to the participants. So basically, all the data is going to be collected virtually in the case of full-fledged decentralized clinical trials. But usually we have also the hybrid form where some aspects of the clinical trial are going to be employing decentralized clinical trial approach, and some other activities are actually going to be covered by the traditional site-based types of clinical trials. And as you can imagine, decentralized clinical trials heavily relies on technology. So We need to use different types of technologies, digital health technologies, including some mobile applications, telemedicine, even wearable devices that will monitor the endpoints or parameters to be measured 7/24. We can also employ electronic health records and the like. So it's heavily dependent on technology. That being said, about the overall aspects of decentralized clinical trials, I know some of you are already aware of this process and task. When we come to the advantage, that could be peculiar, or that could be, with magnified significance in African setup. The advantages include faster retention and also increased faster recruitment, and also increased retention. This is because of the fact that the convenience of the participants is increased, and with the clinical trial coming to the participants, and with avoiding the situation where the participants are going to go to the trial sites for different visits, recruitments, and the likes, the potential participants are going to be more likely to be willing to participate in these types of trials. And also, since the subsequent visits are going to be conducted in exact location wherever the participants are located, missing visits is not going to be, it's going to be at its low, and this translates in terms of improved retention. So these two aspects, faster recruitment and improved retention combined together means basically faster product development. And what this means for Africa is that we have got different types of disease problems where intervention tools are not available. And with this decentralized approach, tools could be developed faster. This is potentially one advantage, which is not unique for Africa, but the impact is going to be so huge. The other is in decentralized clinical trials, the access to the clinical trials is going to be improved in terms of individuals residing in remote African locations. First of all, including these types of participants who are residing in remote locations. That's going to make the data coming out of these types of trials more acceptable. Otherwise, in the traditional clinical trial, data from these types of population is usually not included and factored in terms of product evaluation, and they are disadvantaged. The other benefit to making the trial accessible to such types of population is that, as you know, in remote locations, the quality of healthcare delivery is very much low. And we know that in clinical trials, usually the level of care, the quality of the care provided is very much up to standard. And we know this even from traditional trials. Some participants, their motivation to participate is actually because of the improved level of care. So decentralized clinical trial means for at least the participants in the clinical trial, the level of care, healthcare provision is going to be improved. Another important advantage about decentralized clinical trials is that the data is going to be collected in real-world settings, which can have an implication in faster deployments of the products once they are licensed. As you know, in traditional clinical trials, the data is collected in a very highly controlled clinical trial environment, and this usually does not translate in the the result not necessarily translate in real-world settings. Now, that's why we usually, some sort of bridging studies after phase 3, so that, the policymakers will have all the data related to the effectiveness or usefulness of the product in real-world settings. And usually this takes a huge amount of time. And a good example is, the RTSS, which is called now Mascarix, was approved in 2015 after, undergoing phase 3 trials. but still the product is not deployed. And that was because, data in terms of, real world setting data was not available. And to generate that data, it took something like 6 years. And from what I've heard, WHO pre-qualification for this product only came this year or last year. And you can imagine the number of lives, which are lost to malaria because of, lack of deployments of the RTSS malaria vaccine to the population. So since decentralized clinical trial will be collecting real world data, then deployment is going to be really fast. And probably the other advantage is since decentralized clinical trials will not will curtail the number of sites involved in the clinical trial, data variability is going to be kept at its low. And as you know, some of you are aware with the concept of interaction by site, where variations due to sites are going to be managed, and we need subgroup analysis for that. And for subgroup analysis, the number of sample size should be really huge. So with reduced number of sites, then data variability is going to be reduced, which means the sample size could be curtailed. And the impact of this is that with lower cost, then product could be out there for deployment for managing, neglected diseases. Approval of time to research, to ethical approval could also be improved as a result of the reduced number of sites, because the number of expected approvals is low corresponding to the sites, and that's something meaningful to African setup. The same advantage is there for the developed setting, but you know that it takes only a month or two for approval process in the north. But in African setup, to get an approval, it takes something like 2 years or 2 years. So faster time to approval will have a great impact in African setup. So these are some of the advantages that we can think, and probably extending the situation. In decentralized clinical trials, the complexity of the infrastructure needed by the sites is going to be kept at low, because most of the activities are going to be conducted outside the physical boundaries of the clinical trial sites. And hence, probably the future sites, which are optimal for DCT, are going to have less complex infrastructure. And the implication of this in African setup is that we can't significantly increase the clinical trial sites in Africa because of the need for complex infrastructure. Now, because of the reduced complexity, and then we'll be able to develop clinical trial sites easily, and that means we can have faster development in terms of number in clinical trial sites. Probably to highlight some of the challenges, in Africa, we have got low internet coverage, which means we can't think of DCT without internet. And this is going to be a challenge. Probably someone who is serious about doing DCT in African setup, they have to come up with digital health technologies, which can be taken offline and record all the endpoints and parameters, and whenever there is internet connection, the data could be stored in the devices and finally transferred to the sponsor. The other potential challenge could be low literacy rates in African setup. As you know, managing these digital health technologies needs some level of understanding, and in the absence of, in the case of low literacy, this may be a challenge, and probably using mobile or local health providers could be useful. And again, another challenge is lack of technical assistance whenever there are problems with digital health technologies for troubleshooting. Even low electricity coverage. In Africa, we have got, the coverage of electricity is not as we expect it to be. And this will have an implication because the digital health technologies, they are probably having some batteries to recharge. And if they cannot be recharged, they cannot be sustained. And probably using solar energy technologies embedded in the digital technologies could be something to solve the problem. And the other issue probably it could be management of the investigational product. So what we are saying in fully decentralized clinical trials is that the product is going to be shipped directly to the participant. So all those issues that we have been discussing about product management, investigational product management at the site level now is going now to the individuals, the participants. So issues like storage and documentation, temperature excursions, unauthorized access to the products, accountability, and also adherence issues, and when the product runs out, refill issues. These are going to be some headaches to solve. And finally, we need to think also of the complex cultural situations in Africa. So if we ask someone to with a device 724, will they be willing in Africa to do that? And also if they are in under some sort of surveillance, will they be happy to participate? And we need to also be considering some health disparity issues. So in decentralized clinical trials, probably the participants need to have some, fancy mobile or technology where that can handle the DCT, and internet coverage is also important. So with this, we may select some population who are already, having the means to be able to get this, and other populations without these means may be excluded. So the data from the ones with no means to handle, with no means to get access to these types of, infrastructure may not be factored in product evaluation, and that may be considered as health disparities. So let me stop here and let me leave some space for interaction.
Thank you so much, Dawit. Thank you for that very nice introduction. And there are so many questions. Many people wondering, you have highlighted some of the issues around Africa, internet, power, and people are asking, can such trials really be conducted in Africa? Yes, it can easily be done in the developed countries, but how about in Africa? I think we probably have in-betweens or middle ground of beginnings of these types of trials. And one very interesting question here from Amanda is, what about the ethics? Things like informed consent. How can this be done? And I see Florence is saying apps with dashboards can be monitored virtually. Indeed, there are trials right now where the monitors, and some of it was due to COVID, the monitors couldn't travel to the sites and they had to do a lot of things virtually. And where there are ECRFs, this is of course very possible. So I hand it back to you, Dawit, to talk about the ethics around this and examples. There are some examples already being shared here. The Florence Abok is sharing about a study in Rwanda that is using eLeaf to record COVID test results in Uganda. So there are some examples already being shared by participants, but I'll turn it over to you, Dawit, and then any of the other panelists, if you would like to look through and answer any of the questions. But the main question here is this really doable in Africa? And there are a few answers already saying yes, in part, it's already being done. But one question is it really easy? And do we see more of this happening? So I'll hand it to you, Dawit, and then ask Natasha and also Dr. Wutor to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda, for forwarding the questions, and the audience for the questions. Yeah, that's really the question. Is that doable in Africa? That's something to be asked among ourselves. Yeah, it is true. Most of the guidelines which have been developed by CTTI, the Clinical Trial transformation initiative, and also by FDA, and also even ACRP has got also published a white paper on this. So that's really focusing on the northern part. And the question for us is whether it's doable. And as some of the participants have already mentioned, there are already efforts going on using this technology. Now, if you have noticed, I have been highlighting some potential solutions for the internet, for example. One of the aspects of conducting a trial is capacity building. So if the trial spends some money on capacity building, on building some internet structures in some location, then probably with offline system where the digital health technology recording and storing the data, when it is connected to the internet, then probably the information could be relayed to the sponsor. As to the low literacy rate, probably rather than relying on the response by the participants using healthcare providers, local one or mobile one could be a viable option. Low electricity coverage probably could be covered by a solar system. If the device have got some solar system to energize or to recharge their batteries, can be a solution. We can think of such types of solutions, but that doesn't mean that's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging. But we can start, for example, with hybrid types of trials where some of the activities could be taking the form of decentralized approach. In the meantime, study the challenge in detail and develop some important guidelines, and probably when we have got informed guidelines based on our experience, probably at the end we'll be able to reach there, to do a full-fledged decentralized clinical trials. As correctly pointed out, one of the issues is ethics. So even in the white paper by ACRP, safety issues and right of participants is one of the things that we need to seriously think about it. So that's going to be seen in the future, how it transforms. And mainly the main issue is, private information, confidential information. How can they be relayed, virtually? That's one of the issues. And we have got also issues about safety. For example, when you are, interacting with a participant or patient face to face, there are some kinds of safety signals and issues that you can easily detect, which are not actually probably readily detectable by virtual interactions. But what we have to keep in mind is in DCT, the monitoring is going to be more frequent. And at times when you are using wearable devices, it's going to be a continuous monitoring device. And if you look at if you look at it at that in that context, probably the detection of safety issues could be even better with DCT. So that's going to be decided upon more information coming to us, and also making decisions based on this information. Yeah, back to you, Brenda.
Thank you, Dawit. I wonder, Natasha, do you want to comment? South Africa is not proper Africa, so you may.
No, I totally agree with you. South Africa is definitely not proper Africa. So I think, yes, and me also not having much experience in clinical trials can be slightly biased. But I honestly feel that if you've got the investors interested, if you have got those on the ground who have got the capacity and the ability to build more capacity and to spend time training those who you're going to be using on the floor, along with what Dr. Dawit has said with the issues with regards to connectivity and more, I do think it is something that is very much possible, provided you've got all on board and you've got sufficient training and ongoing training and people readily available to assist as and when it is required.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Natasha, for that. Indeed, everyone has to start somewhere. And like Dawit says, and Stacy also has said it in the chat, it may need to start as a hybrid. I'm going to give it to you, Dr. Wutor, and after that, we have a participant, Florence Abok, who has already shared some experiences in Africa of decentralized trials. So over to you, Dr. Wutor, and then Adam will help us to unmute Florence to share her experience.
Well, just to add to what Dr. Dawit said, I mean, given all the advantages of decentralized clinical trials, it's definitely worth giving it a try. And I'm particularly looking forward to hearing from Florence of her experience. Rwanda perhaps is not also proper Africa. Well, it's still proper Africa, but they're still also a bit up there in terms of literacy. I mean, literacy rate and all of that. I fathom that the main challenge, probably not the main challenge, but one of the challenges would be, you know, having participants who are literate or well educated, or finding a way to make sure that they really understand how to use that platform. Otherwise, it will be so difficult. And so I think that it should be taken as a case-by-case basis. Some trials are there, I think, will be easy to use a decentralized approach, but I think in some other trials, it will just be so difficult to use it as an approach.
Thank you, Dr. Wutor. Over to you, Florence. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. Indeed, it was really great to be part of the CDT training. So yes, we have some studies that use digital apps to be able to collect data from very remote areas. For example, there is a study that we are currently doing in Uganda, and we are able to reach very remote parts of Uganda, in northern Uganda, to collect COVID-19 data. So we have an app that was actually developed locally by the Central Public Health Laboratories, and then this app it's been posted to Google App, so the users in the remote areas can actually be able to download this app from Google Play, and then it has an interface where you can, when you test participants, you can be able to upload their COVID-19 results very quickly. And also it's used in hospitals which have limited access to PCR testings. And the study actually also include suspected COVID-19 participants who are not able to do PCR testings. So the antigen RT testing is done, and then the result is uploaded to the database. And then we can be able to monitor that database when we are not even at the site. So when you open the database, you can be able to see how many hospitals have actually have positive or negative participants, and how many samples have been selected for example, for EQA and all that. So when for decentralized clinical trials to really be possible, you really need to have apps. And apps are there which, for example, this app, you can upload data offline, but when you get to an internet connectivity area, you can upload, you can switch on internet, and then the information is just uploaded. And it's also connected to the LMIS within the hospitals. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Florence, for sharing that. And there are many other experiences being shared in the chat. I see that time is out, and it's been really interesting. And I'm so grateful for all of you who have stayed plugged in all this time. I'll just ask the panelists to have their last word, and then we shall be able to close this off and hand it back to the Global Health Trials team, who have been such great hosts. Thank you so much. Florence, if you could kindly type, oh, she's typed the app. Anyone else who has used some apps that are of interest, please go ahead. We at UVRI-IAVI are part of a study that is going to test a device for self-sampling for HPV. And in the developed countries, the device has been used, and the participants sample themselves, post the samples to a hospital. And we were just discussing how such variations will not be possible here, but we are thinking about how to make it practical in our setting. So I'll just ask Dr. Wutor to go first, then Natasha, and finally Dawit to say your last word and hand it back to the GHT team. Thank you. I see Adam is posting about feedback, so please, if you have to go, kindly complete the survey. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Wutor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brenda, and thanks to everyone who joined today. Again, just to reiterate the fact that this training was really timely and useful from my personal perspective and from the many others. I've seen that some of my colleagues have joined the call and some of them have typed their experiences in the chat. And so I would just hope that we keep at this training, we keep training more and more trialists in Africa, and hopefully, like someone asked in the beginning, we can get to the point where we do a lot of biomedical research here and, help reduce the burden of, diseases in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha.
Yes, I would like to say thank you to everyone, the course convener, to you yourself. I think you've done an excellent job. To everyone who's participated, thank you. And I think, yes, it leaves us here to build capacity and to grow networks and to take this further into Africa. I think it's definitely something that can be done.
Dawit, finally.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda, for that. So thank you everyone for your attendance. And for me, it was very much encouraging to hear the feedback from Natasha and Wutor as well. So I encourage others in this audience who have not yet joined the course to express interest, and also organizations who would like to work with us in the future delivery of the course. So I would look forward to reading your expression of interest using the links. Thank you very much.